How do I recover lost/inaccessible data from my storage device? What steps can I take to try to recover lost or inaccessible data from any storage device? Answers. This applies to any computer storage device, for example internal/external hard drives, USB sticks, flash memory. The most important thing is to stop using it. Any type of I/O can ruin your chances of a recovery. Start here. Click here in case you suspect corruption or bad sectors. Click here in case you suspect mechanical issues. Hard disk failed, no backup, how to proceed with data recovery. Partition raw or lost/deleted. We have separate questions covering common problems with USB flash drives in greater detail. Click here if your flash drive appears as an empty disk drive with no media inserted. Click here if your flash drive appears to be much smaller than it should. Click here if your flash drive is write protected or read only.
In case of corruption or bad sectors, pray, it will help as it calms you down. Smile. Get direct access to the data. When recovering files from an external drive, it's important to have the shortest connection possible. This means that you want to get rid of any extra USB cables, USB hubs or equipment you don't need. If you are recovering from an external hard drive, try to get it out and connect it using a SATA cable. If you are recovering from an USB stick, try to connect it to the back of your computer. Try different ports. Downloading and burn an Ultimate Boot CD needed for further steps. Most tools used in this post are all available on the Ultimate Boot CD. Optionally, to ensure quality, run a checksum with this program against the checksum listed here. Burn the ISO to a CD using imburn on Windows, Liquid on Mac OS or Bracero on Linux. Optionally, to ensure quality, make sure it verifies the CD. Take a backup, easiest disk copy. As we'll try to recover the file system and or recover the data, we are going to tamper with the disk. For this reason you might want to take a preliminary backup to ensure that if things go wrong you still have a backup available. If you suspect disk failure, you might even want to consider to exercise the backup instead so you can still send your hard drive to forensics companies if you really need the data. Start the Ultimate Boot CD. Go to HDD and GT, Cloning Tools and GT, easiest disk copy. Do a disk copy to another device that has enough space free. This will copy the data exactly at a sector by sector level. Check if a hard drive is still in a fine state, Smart Oven. Before we tamper with the drive we want to be sure we aren't making its state worse, so let's first check the state. Start the Ultimate Boot CD. Go to HDD and GT, Device Management Tools and GT, Smart Oven. Check if any of the SMART attributes has a that is in yellow or red. This denotes a bad state. If the state isn't fine, try to recover in case of mechanical issues. If the state is fine, then we'll do an error scan to be aware and get rid of issues. Start the Ultimate Boot CD. Go to HDD and GT, Diagnostic Tools and GT, Vivard. Let it perform an error scan. Note how much errors are found and how many remaps are done. Identify the file system. Covered by How do I identify the file system used on a partition? Try to repair, test disk. Prior to doing the actual recovery, you might sometimes have the need to repair the partitions and file systems first. This is where test disk comes into play. I would recommend to take a look at what it does. This is how to get to it. Start the Ultimate Boot CD. Go to HDD and GT, Data Recovery Tools and GT, Test Disk. Read the documentation at the bottom of this page and try to repair your data. Use recovery software, PhotoRec. Now that the preliminary stuff has been done, this is how you can start recovering. Start the Ultimate Boot CD. Go to HDD and GT, Data Recovery Tools and GT, PhotoRec. Read the documentation at the bottom of this page, example, step by step, and recover your data.
In case of mechanical failures. Introduction. If you have a mechanical failure, for example random crashes, just stops working one day, weird screeching, beeping type noises, every time you plug it in and turn on, you are making it much worse. If it is very important data, I would recommend taking it to a lab, professional data recovery service. Many labs offer free diagnostics. However, if you want to do it yourself, you can summarize mechanical failure into two categories. Inside/media problems or outside/controller problems. First, media/inside problems. This is the worst thing that can happen to a physical hard drive. If it is this, it really depends how bad. If you have decided you want to do this yourself, first step is to clone or image the drive. Some tools allow for cloning/imaging from within Windows. An example being, not free, is a Studio. It allows you to create an image from the drive and performs many passes, then perform the recovery from the image. The idea of multiple passes is to first read data that is easy to read while skipping over bad areas. We want to skip bad areas as reading those will put stress on the drive. Once we have all easy to read data, we can concentrate on bad areas. Even if the drive completely fails at this point, we have the easy to read data, often the bulk. To recover bad areas, we can then do even an additional pass in which we can be more aggressive, reread sectors multiple times, etc. An even better idea can be to use tools like datarecovery or superclone as they run on the Linux platform, which is considered safer than Windows. Windows is more persistent where it concerns trying access unstable drives, which results in more stress put on the drive. If it is a controller board problem, then the most common symptom is that a drive will not spin up. Easiest to determine this. We can replace the board with an identical PCB, however on modern drives this involves transplanting the ROM. Some specialized websites allow you to send in original PCB and swap the ROM for you. If drive does not spin, it's worth checking out the TVs, which acts as a power surge protection. This is DIY-able. If TV's failed, we can remove it and run the drive without it. The drive now runs without protection, so it should be imaged/cloned ASAP and then no longer be used. For more information, this URL. Flash drives. For flash drives, again, if the data is important, go to a lab. If you want to do it yourself, the same general strategy applies, clone/image the device if possible. As a rule of thumb, if the drive is detected in disk management with correct capacity, you can potentially recover the data yourself. If correctly detected, image/clone the flash drive or memory card. Example. Recover files from the image file. If the flash drive is detected but capacity is incorrectly displayed, then controller works, but it is in safe mode. The most common causes for that being corrupt firmware or the inability to communicate with the NAND chips. If the flash drive is not detected at all, then the issue is a physical nature or a controller issue. The latter two issues I do not consider DIY-able.
TestDisk is a free open-source partition scanner and data recovery tool. It is very useful in recovering lost partitions. PhotoRec is another free commonly used data recovery tool. TestDisk and PhotoRec, in addition to being included in the Ultimate Boot CD, as Tom Wichman mentioned in his answer, are also included in the software repositories of many Linux distributions and on the System Rescue CD. System Rescue CD is similar to Ultimate Boot CD, but it is more lightweight, which is an advantage because it is normally run from a CD or a USB flash drive where performance is important. TestDisk is a lot more efficient than PhotoRec. The problem with TestDisk is that it doesn't always recover all deleted files. If you accidentally reformat a partition, TestDisk can recover thousands of files without missing a single file, but if you deleted a file by sending it to the trash and then emptying the trash, TestDisk can't always recover it. So use TestDisk first, and if you recovered all of the deleted files with TestDisk, then you're done. If you recovered most of the deleted files with TestDisk, you can decide whether you're done or not. If you're not done after running TestDisk, you can try recovering the deleted files using PhotoRec. PhotoRec can't recover deleted files that have been completely overwritten, for example, with a DD program. In some cases, the file name is stored in the file itself. PhotoRec tries to recover the file name in this case, but most of the time PhotoRec can't recover the file names. Recover files based on file type using PhotoRec. It is preferable to boot from a Linux Live DVD/USB before following these steps, in order to avoid using the operating system in which the deleted file is located. Install TestDisk if it is not already installed in your OS. In Linux distributions, installing TestDisk will also install PhotoRec along with it. Open a terminal and launch PhotoRec. Launch from a terminal in a live CD/USB or launch as root. Select hard disk. Select partition type. If your hard disk has Linux partitions, then select Intel. Select File Type option. Move to File Opt, and press Enter. Here you can disable all file types by pressing S. Use space to toggle the check button. Select file types to recover. Select options. PhotoRec also has a list of different options. Under normal circumstances you don't need to modify them. Select partition. Move the selector to the partition from which you have removed the file. Then press Enter on Search. Select file system type. If you are using Linux, it's going to be x2/x3/x4, so the default selection is x2/x3. Otherwise, if you are recovering files from a partition formatted as FAT or NTFS, select Other. Select space for analysis. Select free if you didn't write to that partition after removing the particular file, otherwise select whole. Select a directory to recover files. Now select the path where the recovered files will be stored. Then press Y. PhotoRec will show how many files it has recovered. Source: revised from How to Recover Deleted Files in Linux Using PhotoRec.
This answer addresses situations where a drive and/or file system were partially overwritten. Reasons could be partial/interrupted format, partial overwrite of start partition, partial wipe or zero fill using a secure wiping tool, wrong drive selected by Windows Media Creation tool. The tool used in some examples is purely to demonstrate certain points, and is not an endorsement for this particular software. Assumption is that many file system organize metafile system structures towards the start of a volume. This is particularly true for Microsoft file system like NTFS and the various flavors of FAT. If any specific file recovery software can partially reconstruct the file system depends on the tool's intelligence with regards to working with partial file systems. It may come as a surprise, but many file recovery tools are not particularly good at this and will quickly fall back to raw or file signature-based recovery. In this case, file names, folder structure will not be recovered and also non-contiguous files will be corrupt. Signature-based scans are also prone to false positives. For example, tool claims to have detected a JPEG file while in reality it did not. No matter the tool you settle for, you will need to configure it for a full scan. If, for example, file system was partially formatted with a different file system than the original, a full scan may be needed to detect the previous file system. If the tool permits, configure it to scan for the previous file system. So, assume a exFAT volume was accidentally, partially, formatted with NTFS file system, set the tool to scan for exFAT file system or vice versa depending on your exact scenario. Assuming approximately 1 TB FAT32 partition, start of volume overwritten, biggest determining factor is whether FATs, file allocation tables, or at least one copy survived. No one can tell this in advance as multiple variables are at play, how much was overwritten and size of FATs. If FAT survived, file system-based recovery is possible. This means we can reconstruct, virtually, a folder structure, recover file names, and recover fragmented files. Without the FAT we can, partially, reconstruct folder structure and file names, but we have to assume all files are contiguous. So result of recovery is dictated by amount of data that was overwritten. Ideally, when dealing with data loss scenarios, you clone or image the patient drive first. So for that you'd need a destination drive with sufficient capacity. I suggest then you scan the clone/disk image or patient drive if you decide not to clone, using a tool like Diamond. After scan, select most promising file system. Then click All Found, Virtual File System and GT, Default Reconstruction and GT, Parameters to determine state of file allocation tables. Select second FAT if first is partially damaged. Diamond Demo allows you to test recovery by actually saving some files. You can also preview, for example, JPEG files. Check some larger JPEGs and see if they look okay. If not, the tool may have come up with incorrect file system parameters, start of file system and cluster size being most important. As directory entries point to start cluster, file allocation table refers to cluster. Two factors that need to be guessed correctly is offset from which we start counting clusters plus sectors per cluster. Tools and GT. Reopen volume parameters allows you to modify these parameters, but modifying these requires understanding of FAT32 file system internals, and a bit of luck. Assuming NTFS, a similar story applies. This time, however, it's the MFT that is important. How much of MFT did survive? MFT usually is towards the start of the volume. It, however, commonly MFT is fragmented, and those additional fragments have a better chance of surviving. The more of the MFT survives, the better and more complete file system reconstruction will be. You can only find out by trying. If part of the $MFT survived, partial reconstruction of folder structure may be possible, which EMO is preferred over a purely raw recovery. However, more likely is that your recovery will largely consist of files detected by their magic bytes or signature, so without original file names and folder structure. A very common scenario is that Windows Media Creation tool was run and wrong drive selected. If the victim/target drive contains a single NTFS partition, it's likely the bulk of MFT data gets overwritten by the media creation tool, and recovery software will not detect file names or original folder structure.
If you are supported, please